maybe health. Maybe men don't often enough tell each other their health challenges, right? So they'll keep it to themselves. But by and large, men, men who meet other men that they don't even know very well and sort of converse deeply. Yeah, I don't think there's major. If there was one, I would say it would be health. I don't even think it's finances. Men are reasonably open with their finances, just saying it's good or it's not so good. But I would say health, probably their physical health. They're not always very honest, first to themselves, and then even to other men or their brothers or their friends. They're not very honest there.
So I'll start with my father. I will describe my father's love as the classic old school Nigerian man love. We, I mean, he passed away recently, and I think we exchanged one hug in his entire life, right? Which again, based on the time he grew up as a man and based on his position in society, he very firmly adopted the strong, manly archetype. And his love was very unspoken, let me put it that way. And so it wasn't expressed, but it was more through action. It wasn't expressed through words per se. And I'd say the effect that has had on me is now, it's sort of how you see something and, you see it for its pros and its cons and you can see it fairly objectively. And based off of that, you can now reshape how you want to experience that thing. Now that I have my own kids and I have my own son, I'm trying to be a lot more expressive, verbally and otherwise with him. Trying to be a lot more present in his life. And, at the same time, also being aware that, it's pros and cons to everything, right? So this new age love idea of a thing, yes, it may have its additional pros, but I think there might also be cons, and I don't think we'll ever get it right. And, as they say, everything in life is cyclical. So that's my approach to love, to friends, and my own family now.
I think that's very positional, right? So if you're the older brother, it's a different level, right? Especially in a reasonably traditional Nigerian / African home, where there's a maximum level to which that conflict can escalate, only because there's already inherent trapdoors, there's already guardrails. Do you understand? There's a limit to which my brother will speak to me, just because we're a traditional home, right? So even if he's extremely upset, he will manage it just because of that, right? But the rule doesn't necessarily apply to me because it's top to the bottom. But I've had a lot of conflict, not too much. I would say more than anything else is joint challenges have brought us closer, right? And also the ability to understand that he has skill sets that I don't. So even though I'm the first and everything is supposed to fall on you, you understand very quickly that he has skill sets. He knows things that you don't know. So I wouldn't say conflict per se. We're not a very conflicted family. I would say just external challenges. Internally, not particularly. We can have a disagreement, but very quickly that's sorted out. But as a whole, there would probably be external conflicts, not internal, that made us sort of come together, fix the problem as a unit, and then address it. Other than that, no, he knows. I can deal with him if he tries me.
So, I'd want to speak to that. So again, that there was an external conflict ones which I take responsibility for bringing into the family, and it was a reminder for me that we use the word brother and bro and boss in passing, but it came from somewhere, and it was a real reminder that my brother has my back, right? Like whatever means he needs to go to, that experience sort of made it very clear to me. I mean, it was something that maybe I hoped and I believed, but seeing it and going through it made it very, very clear to me. And then the last thing I will also say is that it's also the understanding of time, right? The power of time. When they say time heals all wounds, I think that's really, truly true. So no matter in the moment and when conflicts and things happen, it can seem like, it's absolutely terrible and everything's fractured, but ultimately time heals. And, of course, when there's blood involved, it's almost must heal.
So I think in your youth, you're young until you die. I think when you are younger, it's easier to be vulnerable, right? But, and this is a very odd thing to say, so pardon me, but with age, you find that you can sometimes be punished for for verbalizing your vulnerability, right? You when you take it not just to the world, but sometimes even to your intimate partners, right? Whether it's your partner or your legal partner or not your legal partner, you can be punished for it, and it's not even always deliberate. It's just, is that there's a Nigerian way we do things, right? So, is it not you that went to police station and you're like, but that was a vulnerable moment for me. Why are you making light of it, right? But my advice to young men is this: have your person or people you can be vulnerable with, that to an extent there is no blowback. I'm not going to go the hard line of saying that your immediate intimate partner, you should not be vulnerable with them. But I would say exercise judgment with it. Right. This is something that you learn over time. And oftentimes if you meet the person and you say, but I was vulnerable, and you threw it in my face, they don't have any recollection of it. They don't remember doing that. So manage your vulnerability. And if you're lucky enough to have a partner who has the emotional intelligence to manage you, fine. But if not, and I think it may be even easier, male to male, find your tribe, your men that you can go and vent to, be vulnerable with.
So, yeah, me to add to that, I broadly agree with everything he said. And that picture of the older man, right, the father sat quietly in the compound or in the veranda. Vulnerability has a lot to do with that, because again, I think men often find over time that there's just a bunch of stuff that they just have to keep to themselves, right? And so that silence and that sitting there and just being by yourself, I would almost say it comes from being less vulnerable as you grow older and just having less outlets for this vulnerability.
Process it yourself. I see this very weird thing. Before I had my son, in a weird way, he was my first. And that's weird, right? Because he's my brother. But then he was the last of the 5 of us. Okay. So, because, and as you mentioned, our dad, the way we were raised, responsibility is critical. So if something was happening to him, it's my direct responsibility, even though he has his dad, right? So in a sense, my dad is teaching me to look after them, even though he's looking after all of us. So for me, shelter is 2 ways. The first shelter is the one that I have to provide by virtue of being first. It's not something you learn, it's just something you're told, like you get a sense of it, okay? Right from primary school, right from secondary school, uni, he's your brother, so your job is to make sure that he's fine, okay? What is weird about it is that there's so many other scenarios where he had to make sure I was fine without verbalizing it or making me feel less, right? He'll have to handle the problem without ruining the ego, because technically, we've changed this. But as we get older, those lines are blurred, okay? Because, once you're past 30 something, you're kind of all peers. So, yeah, of course, there's always respect. So that shelter, I think, for me, was first about providing it because of just the structure of the family. And then I would say for myself, I've always been lucky with my peer group, with my parents as well. My parents are just, there was always a sense of warmth, and you knew you were okay. my peer group, of course, and then my siblings. The word isn't shelter, but there's a trust. I could trust my siblings. Okay, so I understood that I had to provide shelter, but I also understood that I had shelter. Whether it was my very good friends, my crew, as you call them, definitely my parents, and of course my uncles. I had really good uncles as well. One in particular, Uncle Mike, who created that mental shelter, right? Not just physical, but mental shelter. So it's two sides: the one you provide and the one you receive.
So shelter is a tricky word there, but I'll try do my best. I going off going off of the the angle sort of Adegbe took in sort of that provision and receiving of shelter. Um, I I'd say for me, again coming up as the last in my family, um, at some point I'd say that my role was really I felt like my role was a little bit of the sort of connector with everyone, right? I mean, one very interesting things like I've done business with every single member of my family, right? So that sort of everybody's guy the role was there a bit. And again, I think it's just, in terms of the word shelter, it's just about being a safe space for people, right? I think that's really critical, very important. And I mean, I have nephews now who are, in their teens and, getting out of their teenage years. And, so I try to sit with them every now and then, I spoke to them about, which was something that I had experienced, from Adegbe. But I let them know that, look, there's a car crash at 1 a.m. Um, you got to go pregnant and DSS picked you up for some whatever reason, whatever it is, I need you to know that you can call me, right? We'll solve the problem first and then we'll deal with the thing afterwards, right? Which again is a mentality that he sort of really had. So I think that's very important in that sort of spirit of that provision, like just letting people know that it's okay, man. Like, hindsight is 2020. Life has also taught me that it's very easy to point out all the faults of planning anything that didn't go right. But especially when people understand that, yeah, this thing didn't work out as needed, I think it is very important not to rub that in, right? Don't go over the him. Like it doesn't really serve purpose in my view. So for me, these sort of things are very important in providing shelter in brotherhood and yeah, also receiving it.
This is part brotherhood, part being Nigerian. When you have brothers, none of your successes are yours alone, and none of your failures are yours alone. Okay? When you're winning, part of that win is for your brothers. When you are in distress, when you're suffering, part of that burden is also for your brothers. Okay? It is their job to be for both. Okay, so if something amazing happens for Owuno and he tells me immediately, and it's even a running joke, I'm like, hey, look, where's my account number? What's going on, right? And the idea is that when you win, a little part, it's a very African thing. A little part is for others. It is not structured. It is not written. And the first group of others is your brothers, whether it's your biological or your people. And I'm talking outside of your family and, those are your structures. But part of that win is for them. And when you're losing, which happens to all men, you're brothers. And they're your good brothers, your good people are there to help you pick up the slack, whether you've verbalized it or not. And the best brothers will read that before you said it. They can read you. One of my great examples was a friend of mine, Taiwo, who called me. This was maybe 4 years ago. And from the tone of my voice, he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Oh, for some things this morning, I'm not quite ready." And he said, you? I said, yeah, it wasn't you that I didn't have. He said, you that you are down, like he could hear my voice. And he said, send me your account number. This is all happening in minutes. And he said, what's the exact thing you need to pay for? And I said, this is it. And he sent me the exact thing I needed to pay for completely. This is, I think that phone call. And I now had the sustenance and the energy to get out of bed. So your brothers, they're your shelter, and you are also theirs. I would say that's the summary of that, what the brotherhood means. Yeah, for me.
I've come to believe that very often it's so there's different types of brothers, right? There's the really, really good brothers, like, we spoke to like your guys, the ones that got you all the way through. And of course, there's the periphery brothers, right? Which, they're your guys, but it's not always that deep. I'd say more often than not, it's not that people don't want other people to be successful, right? It's not that men don't want other men to do well, but very often there can be a fear of other men doing well before them. Right. So it's like, look, no problem. You said you can make your billions, but when you make it before me and you pass me, right, it can almost be fear of not catching up or never getting up there, right? So I'd say my advice would just be that there's a Yoruba saying that I don't speak Yoruba, but it says that people are not always bad, but sometimes the devil will just rent your body. And whenever there's good news from something good happens to a brother of yours, check yourself and check in the bottom of your belly, as we say, if there's any bad feeling, right? And I don't know the answer to solving that, but I think it is something that it serves well to try and kill and quench. Just genuinely happy your brothers, because like I said, with real brotherhood, his win is also your win, your win is his win, right? I think it's a sad thing if as a man you don't have someone that you can call with a win, with excitement and with energy, that there's no judgments, there's no bad energy, there's none of that coming through. So honestly, as men, my advice would be find those people that you can share that thing with in pureness, and they're receiving it in pureness, and you're together on it.
It's a tough brotherhood is love, right? It's love. It's non-physical, but essentially it's love. That's your brother is who you love, is who you've chosen, and they've chosen you. Okay, so my brother is love, right? And of course you can always add, but if the sentence brotherhood is love, I think that's what it is for me. I think that's what it is. Yeah.
I would say brotherhood it's a dap and laughter. It's a dap and laughter. My brother and my brothers, I think that's always symbolic of the moments we connect and moments we share together. It's laughter, man. There's a lot of laughter.
Definitely the old man. It's chief. My old man, that's man, look, he did it. He set the way. I always used to tell him, I would say, you are the river from which we all flow. Everything that you see, you did this for us. And by omission or commission, you set us on our path. So if there's one man, it's him. And I'm lucky that he happens to be my biological father, but he's also that guy, that man. Sorry, not that guy for me. It's definitely the old man.
Has to be the same, man. There's just his unwaveringness in what he stood for and what he believed in. We live today, like you can't fake it. You can't. To emulate it is even difficult. Yeah, I mean, I remember once at maybe the lowest of my low, I was working in one village in the UK, and at the time a lot of people used to approach me because we dealt with credit cards, and they used to approach me to try and buy credit card details, and the money would have been great. And I never did, and I never understood why, but I realized that it was just what the foundation of morality was so strong. Yeah. And I called him just before I went into work, and I just let him know that, look, thank you very much for this strong moral foundation. I'm sure he didn't understand where that was coming from. But yeah, but he's been there, and he's that guy.
He's the guy. Yeah. Chief is the boss. Yeah. So I mean, I've known you for a while. But the thing I most like about you as a person and your craft is that it has always been authentic. There's always been working with you. Yes, of course, we have to pay some sort of bill. There's a process, right? This is even free, but there was always an authenticity to what you were doing. Always. I always felt that I'm dealing with someone who is a believer. There are not many left, right? He believes. And true believers, whether it is in a better tomorrow or the thing that they're doing today or in the next person, they're a bit rare, especially in our society. So where we meet them, we have to acknowledge them. We have to respect their craft. It's not easy to be a believer. So I would say this is amazing. I mean, my brother and I talk every day about all sorts of nonsense, but to your work, your team, your people, you are authentic, and you can't buy it. You certainly cannot fake it. So well done, and please keep being authentic. It is the thing that you go to bed at night with. It's the thing that wakes you up in the morning. So if you ask me, I would say yes. It's authentic. Yeah.
I think there's as much as men talk, right? I think there's some things that we don't necessarily address fully, right? And sometimes, some of them are conscious, some of them are subconscious. And I think that what you're doing with Gen Connect brings some of these conversations into the light in ways that they haven't been done before. Again, off of your authenticity, there's a lot of honesty in how it's formatted, what you're talking about, what you're trying to hit. And honestly, I wish and I pray for the best of success with everything that you're doing with Gents Connect. And I really pray that, with every piece of content you produce, that, you reach somebody in a way that they needed to be reached on the day that they are reached.